Am I the a-hole for not making any efforts to get my kids to like my mother's boyfriend? I feel like this situation has been building for a while, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. My father passed away when I was 20, and my mom didn't handle it well. I get it. Losing your spouse is brutal, especially after years of being with them. She grieved for a long time, but over the years, she slowly started to pick up the pieces. It wasn't until 15 years later that she started dating again, and that's when Jim came into the picture. I don't hate the guy, but I don't exactly like him either. Jim drinks a lot, which is honestly a huge red flag for me. My mom's canceled plans with us more times than I can count because he's been drunk, and it's always some excuse about how they were out late or he wasn't feeling well. Then there's the fact that Jim isn't exactly Mr. Charming. He's made some really inappropriate jokes to my brother, like borderline offensive stuff. Not once, but a few times. It's just uncomfortable. And when he's around, I'm always on edge. But the thing is, Jim makes my mom happy. They seem to enjoy each other's company, and I'm all for that. She deserves some happiness after everything. The issue that's been bothering me, though, is that my mom really wants to push this grandparent thing onto my kids, especially my daughter. She's been trying to get my kids to bond with Jim like he's their actual grandfather. I'm sorry, but that's just not happening. Jim is not their grandpa, and my wife and I have made it clear that while we respect that he's important to my mom, we're not going to force a relationship. The kids are still young, and I don't want them being confused or put in a position where they feel like they have to call him grandpa just because he's dating their grandmother. Now, the situation reached a head in December, and that's where everything blew up. My daughter had her first ever dance recital, and it was a big deal for us. It was one of those things that felt like it was marking a real milestone in her life. She was so excited, and we were all buzzing. There was a limit of 4 guests per child for the event, and normally we'd invite one of the kids' grandparents. But my mom was out of town at the time, and my in-laws were busy with something else. So we didn't even think to invite them. My daughter, though, invited her Uncle Rob, my brother, to come along with me, my wife, and our son. That was her decision, and we respected it. So my mom and Jim come to visit us that weekend, and my daughter has the photo album out. She's flipping through, and when she gets to the page with the recital pictures, my mom notices that my brother was there, but she wasn't. She immediately asked, "Why wasn't I there?" I reminded her she was out of town at the time, and then she hit me with, "Well, Jim was in town." Honestly, at that moment, I didn't even know how to respond. We didn't even think to invite Jim, and neither did the kids. I told her that it was my daughter who chose to invite her uncle. We respected that, and that was that. But then Jim pipes up saying, "Well, next time when Grandma isn't around, you can invite me, kiddo." My daughter kind of just looked at him blankly, and that's when my wife stepped in. She said something like, "You can invite whoever you want, sweetheart," trying to keep the peace. At that point, I could tell my mom wasn't thrilled, but we didn't think much of it. We went about the rest of the weekend like nothing happened. But later that day, after they left, I got a phone call from my mom. She was upset, really upset. She said that she felt like we weren't making an effort to welcome Jim into the family and that we were depriving our children of a wonderful grandfather. I won't lie, at that moment, my blood started to boil. I told her that we would never force our children to like him or spend time with him if they didn't want to. I said, "You know, this isn't up for discussion. It's not like we're trying to be disrespectful, but we're not going to push this thing onto our kids just because you're dating him." She responded by saying that I was being too harsh, and I could tell she was trying to guilt-trip me into feeling bad for her. I don't know, maybe I was too blunt with her, but I honestly didn't feel like I could sugarcoat it anymore. We ended up having a full-blown argument on the phone, and I eventually just hung up. A few days later, I talked to my brother and some other family members. They all kind of ganged up on me, telling me I was being too harsh on Jim. Some of them even said I was being unfair to my mom for not encouraging my kids to bond with him. One of my cousins said, "You should be happy she's found someone who treats her well. You're pushing him away for no reason." And it hit me. Maybe I am being too harsh. I mean, I don't want to be the kind of person who sabotages my mom's happiness, But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I can't just stand by and let her pressure us into making my kids call Jim grandpa when they don't want to. The thing is, I'm not even sure where to go from here. My mom has been pushing this idea of family bonding for a while, and I don't know if I'm the one in the wrong or if I'm just being protective. I don't want to shut my mom out, but I also don't want her to think that I'm going to sit back and let her run roughshod over how we raise our kids. My wife agrees with me, but I feel guilty. Like I should be doing more to get along with Jim, especially if it means so much to her. But at the same time, I don't want to compromise my kids' sense of boundaries for the sake of my mom's happiness. So, I'm turning to you guys. Am I the a-hole for sticking my ground on this? Should I just try harder to make Jim feel like part of the family, or am I right to not want to push this grandparent role on my kids?